he had been actually playing Little League out in Montgomery. And I was one of the coaches on his teams, and it just seemed that it was more evident this year that he wasn't able to keep up with the other kids. You know, he got tired just running to first base. And I talked to Christy about it. I'm like, you know, he's not growing the way he should be. Something's going on.
One thing I did know was that I was slower than everybody else.
Pulled a pediatrician out of the book and got lucky, and she ended up being phenomenal. A pediatrician right here in Conroe. And she even thought it was more like respiratory. She didn't pick up on the cardiac issues until I think maybe the second visit.
Rylan was referred to us by a pediatric pulmonologist. The pulmonologist was concerned about his cardiac status. Actually sent him to another pediatric cardiologist who made a diagnosis of restrictive cardiomyopathy.
Pretty much the second sentence that he said was, Rylan's going to need a heart transplant.
And so he was then referred to us. And so I started seeing them in the fall of 2011.
The pediatric cardiologist actually had only seen it one time ever in his practice. And so we figured it was quite rare. We did go home and actually started looking it up on the internet and found out that it was 1 in a million.
Did a lot of Googling.
And then we decided we're not going to Google anymore. That's not always a good thing, that we're going to listen to the people that see him.
Restrictive cardiomyopathy is one of the less common forms of cardiomyopathy that we see. Essentially what that is, though, is that the heart is very stiff. It doesn't relax well. A heart has to relax in order to fill with blood, and then also, of course, has to squeeze in order to eject blood. This is for whatever reason, and most of the time, particularly in children, we don't understand the underlying cause, but it creates this stiffness of the heart that doesn't allow it to relax and makes it very difficult to fill with blood. And then patients typically develop symptoms, and in Rylan's case, where the blood, in a sense, backs up. And in his case, he had a very enlarged liver, and he was developing a fluid that was leaking out into his tissues, what we call peripheral edema, and creating symptoms for him.
There just isn't much on restrictive cardiomyopathy.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the issues with it being so rare. I want to toss out probably a bad figure, but I want to say there was only like 18 studies that I read that TCH has had over, I think, the past 20 years of his specific restrictive cardiomyopathy. So they just don't have a lot of information about it, and especially, following kids with it.
So funding for the American Heart Association is important.
Yeah, all that research to, maybe change somebody else's life down the road would be enormous.
Very early in my career, when I had just completed my training, I applied for and received from the American Heart Association what was then referred to as a Clinician Scientist Award. And that provided financial support for me. And with some of the research work that I was able to do then, I was able to apply for and receive additional funding from the National Institutes of Health. And then beyond that, at both the state level and the national level, the American Heart Association continued to support research efforts of my own for another 10 years.
The huge part with any situation is just education and getting the word out, and sharing it with as many people as possible. And we've been able to do that to some extent through Facebook. He's got a page that was initially, for the first year, just close friends and family. Mm-hmm. And then one of the weeks we were in TCH, he was in there in the ICU, and someone shared his page, and it just blew up, and now he's got like 18,000 friends on his page.
We're very committed to Rylan and his family, to finding a heart for him and giving him an opportunity to enjoy his childhood and get into adult life and experience life the way it should be for a young man his age.
With a new heart, I could like swim and run around and do stuff that I couldn't do.